participants. My name is David Kelly. I'm the former Dean at Northern Essex Community College and the retired Executive Director of Massachusetts Colleges Online, a consortium of community colleges and state universities that did online associate, bachelor's, and master's degrees. So this morning we're going to have a wonderful keynote. We're going to have terrific sessions and a gourmet lunch. If you believe that. I have a bridge in Boston, so this is a conference that's been around for quite a few years. This is 32 years. Imagine that. That's older than some of you in the room. And it's always been attended by folks that are practitioners. These are the folks that run the trains at the institutions. These are the folks that get their hands dirty. These are the folks that save souls. And that's what we do. That's what our mission is. I want to read you a bit from our mission statement. I know this, like our students. You take this home, you read it and come back and we'll discuss it tomorrow. And how many of you have read the entire mission statement? Yeah, I figured, yeah, Molly has. She helped to write it. But I'm not going to read the entire, but I'm going to, a little bit of an abstract for you. And I'm a little raspy. It's not getting over from COVID. It's terrible allergies I brought down from Boston. So don't worry. The focus of TASS is best practices that are supported by solid research. However, we are not a research conference, but rather a practitioner conference. We are a unique conference that provides a productive environment for dialogue between faculty and student services. We go beyond student underpreparedness and the student success in higher education. We are looking into student success beyond the academia and after graduation. So that's a very succinct statement about what we're all about. And I think you're going to find that the sessions this morning, this afternoon, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning will be focused literally on that succinct abstract of our mission statement. But I do have an assignment for you, and that's to go and read the entire mission statement, because tomorrow I'm going to have questions, and we're going to have a little test, and we're going to embarrass the person that didn't read the mission statement. So, and if you did read the mission statement and you can answer some of the questions, we may have a prize for you. May. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Dave, and he's going to come up and do his thing, and we'll wish you the best luck in having a wonderful conference. And by the way, there's a beach down there. If you leave Fort Lauderdale without seeing the beach, you're going to miss something really grand, and that's a bunch of teenage kids and college students running around half naked.
Good morning. I was just noting that Dave's over here fancy with his iPad, and I'm up here with scribbled notes. Old school and new school, I guess, doesn't seem to fit, but I'll be pretty quick today. First and foremost, thank you all for being here again. Obviously, this conference wouldn't happen without you guys here. It's a great conference. I've been coming for 7 years, I think, minus the pandemic years, and I love it. It's one of my favorite conferences. It's actually my favorite conference that I go to all year. So thank you guys for being here. Once again, thank you to Northern Essex Community College and Broward College. This would not happen without the support of those two generous institutions. So hats off to them and the support that they give us. Tech support, again, if you need tech support, if you're a presenter and want to attend one of the tech sessions, they are at 8 a.m. in Abiona, which I think is down the hall that way. And real quick, great job to Harold and Greg. If we could give them a quick round of applause. They are here if you have any tech questions. In the back, you'll see them there in the black shirts from Broward. They do a fantastic job setting up all of the tech for the entire conference. So if you need something, find them and they'll be able to help you out. A couple of quick announcements for Guidebook. Did you get the cancellations, the notifications? We're on our way, it's working, right? Any issues or questions with guidebook at all? Everything works okay? Okay. Find me if you have any questions or issues, and we'll get those resolved. Again, a reminder, please complete these session evaluations at the end of each session. They're in guidebook in the session. If you scroll down to the bottom of the description, there's a link there that will take you to the evaluation, and it's automatically linked to each of the sessions. So let's see, a couple last things here. If you're presenting and need a clicker, a slide advance clicker, they have them available at the registration table. Just sign them out real quick, and you can use those. Excuse me. Wi-Fi. If you're not staying here and you're not already connected, there is Wi-Fi in this area. It's Event Wi-Fi is the name of it, and then the password is event321 exclamation point. Did I get that right? Capital E on event. So capital E, event 321 exclamation point. Quick reminder to make sure you have your name tags on for all of the events, the breakfast, the lunch, and the reception. If you have dietary restrictions, please find someone in line as you're in line or wherever the food is set up. Find someone with Riverside, and they will have your food kind of set aside for you. And then again, a reminder that we will be taking photos throughout the conference. If you don't want your picture taken or don't want your picture posted, please let one of us know on the executive board or let them know at the registration table, and we will make sure that doesn't happen. So that's all I have this morning. Again, thank you for coming. It's going to be an awesome day, and as David said, you know, after the sessions, explore Fort Lauderdale. There's a lot to do here. I did the water taxi yesterday. If you haven't done that before, that's a great little trip, and you get to see a lot of houses that none of us will ever be able to afford, and boats that, I saw a $100 million boat yesterday. Yeah, $100 million, they said. So anyways, it's a lot of cool stuff to see. Yeah. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Michelle Levine. Michelle is the District Director of Faculty Development at Broward College. So I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome Broward College participants, and welcome everyone else to South Florida. We're so happy to have you down here. It is my pleasure to introduce our Broward College Provost, Dr. Jeffrey Nassi. Dr. Nassi is a proven academic leader with a sustained track record of success in various leadership capacities at Broward College. Some of his roles since joining Broward College in 2005 include Senior Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dean of Education Pathway, Dean of Academic Affairs, Dean of Academic Resources and Writing Programs, Associate Dean of English, and Associate Dean of Communications and Fine Arts. He has also held adjunct faculty positions at Florida Atlantic University, Central Maine Community College, and East Carolina University. Upon his honorable discharge from the Marine Corps in 1994, Dr. Nassi has attended East Carolina University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Communications in 1999 and a Master of Arts in English in 2002. He completed his PhD in Educational Leadership and Research Methodology at Florida Atlantic University in 2013. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nassi.
(1994). Good morning, colleagues. My name is Jeffrey Nassi. I'm very proud to serve as the college provost and vice president of academic affairs here at Broward College. Great to see everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning, and certainly on behalf of our college president, our faculty and staff, students at the college, our pleasure to welcome you here to the 32nd annual Teaching Academic Survival and Success, the TASS conference, sponsored by our colleagues here from Northern Essex and of course Broward College. You know, it's great to be at an in-person event. Certainly I've had my fill of Zoom conferences, and while they're convenient and effective in their own way, you know, nothing like being here in person with like-minded professionals to continue, take on that challenge of reaching more of our students and of course seeing them succeed. And I remember well the first time I attended TASS as a faculty member years ago, and particularly, like we heard this morning, that hands-on, classroom-based, kind of that practitioner perspective was so really valuable, and just a great hallmark of this meeting. And you know, those real experiences with students in the classroom and beyond are just so informative. So as we begin the conference this morning, you know, surviving and succeeding, I think that's an apropos conference. You know, as we look across our higher education landscape this morning, you know, it's really taken on new meaning for all of us. And I can tell you that specifically for us at Broward College, you know, surviving and succeeding as an open access community college in the last couple of years has been a real and pressing challenge for us. Like so many of our community colleges across the country, you know, the last couple of years have brought on, you know, for us, remarkable drops in enrollment, you know, and exacerbated some of those socioeconomic inequities we have long tried to reconcile in our work to transform lives through academic excellence and those meaningful career opportunities. At the same time, tough 2 years for sure. In some ways, it's been a catalyst for us. You know, it's been a catalyst for opportunities and how we might consider, if not reinvigorate, our work. We've seen countless examples of how educators and students alike have changed their approach to teaching and learning, and how institutions of higher education have reimagined their role in supporting the communities they serve. And certainly, the concurrent sessions today and the next couple of days certainly demonstrate some of those amazing things that are happening in the classroom. I saw some of the sessions, you know, mission creation, supporting diverse learners in online spaces, coordinated care networks, academic awareness, and so many of the applicable lessons learned from our experience toward the future of education. It certainly promises, I think, to be an exciting discussion with a lot of good takeaways. I know tomorrow my colleague, Associate Vice President Esmeralda Sweeney, will talk a lot of what we're doing in the student services space and student achievement initiatives, and so it'll be very good. I would like to briefly share with you some of the broader organizational level work we're doing at Broward College to really leverage the potency of higher education toward equity. Like your own organizations, ours is far-reaching, with lots of multiple constituencies. We're engaged in multiple efforts. Of course, we're trying to reach minoritized communities, low-income students, first generation, and so on. And of course, so many of these areas overlap, you know, in those areas. And we're really focused on that great challenge of ensuring that each student receives what they need. The goal to achieve equity is really our unifying principle at Broward College. So no matter what we're doing and across areas, that's kind of the connecting thread, if you will, that we're focusing on. So throughout the conference, you will see many examples from the Broward College team. You know, first, how are we understanding those needs for students and meeting where they are, and then working to better meet those needs of the individual students, particularly minoritized learners for whom we've simply not done enough in trying to realize equity in our student success outcomes. You know, access, success, workforce outcomes, you know, these are all connected for us through the Achieve Equity lens. And so from a broad organizational lens in academic affairs, this commitment to equity is really manifested in our effort to first, despite, I talked about the enrollment challenges we had at the college, declining enrollment, declining resources, to build out our full-time faculty capacity. At the beginning of the year, as we set our goals, we committed to hiring at least 15 new full-time faculty at the college, and we are currently in the process of conducting 24. So we exceeded that full-time faculty positions in high-need areas. So as faculty build curriculum and they drive their curriculum, you know, what was important for us is bringing in more full-time faculty gave us greater capacity to build relevant, responsive, and importantly for us, really a market-driven curriculum to provide that value for our students, and very much a career orientation in terms of curriculum. You know, more full-time faculty also provides greater opportunities for student engagement with those faculty. So we know that student engagement is really a cornerstone to survival and success, and for which much of this conference is about, we'll discuss. And of course, full-time faculty are focused wholly on teaching and learning. Again, a focus here at TASS, of course. So that was kind of first and foremost, is we really need to reinforce, if you will, our front lines, and we wanted to hire more full-time faculty. In tandem with that effort to hire faculty, we embarked on what we call our racial equity change effort. We call this our RECE. And our RECE is to establish an equity-centered process for the hiring of full and part-time faculty at the college. So what we call our RECE really has evolved as part of our participation in the Racial Equity Leadership Academy. And this is an academy put on by Achieving the Dream in partnership with the University of Southern California and their Race and Equity Center. So a cohort of colleges participated in, and through that participation, we developed this RECE. Kind of at the center of that effort of hiring and building out this equity-centered hiring process is that a diverse faculty body serving a diverse student body leads to improved student outcomes. So that's kind of at the center of everything that we're doing. And of course, that's supported in the literature, and you can see some of the quotes there on the slide. So along with many of our efforts at the classroom level, of course, which you'll hear about at the department level, at the meta major, if you will, or pathway level, at the college level, this was something we wanted to do across the institution in our effort towards academic success. So we focused on really a systemic reality and trying to build out a diverse faculty that meets the needs, of course, of our diverse student body. So as we looked nationally at this, regionally, and of course at our own institution ourselves, you know, we could see that the staff and faculty at community colleges is far less diverse than the students' populations attending these colleges. So here's the national picture from the American Association of Community Colleges, and you can see, you know, the student graphic there. You can see the breakdown of for example, you know, Black African American is the gold stripe, Hispanic is that purple, and then look at the faculty, right? Much different. And then you go to student services and it's a little bit better, and then management. And you know, when we were looking at this, of course, we said, well, you know, we're Broward College, we're in Broward County, it's an extremely diverse place. We don't look anything like this. And then, but we did. We had to take a look at ourselves and see what we look like. And so here is our data here. So on the top is our students. So that orange line, and as you can see, this goes back from 2015. So that orange is students who identify themselves as Latinx, identify themselves as Black, is that blue line on the top. And then below is our faculty demographics. And so faculty who identify as white is that top line there in the gray. So really out of alignment, and historically out of alignment for a long time. You know, in as diverse a community as Broward County, with an equally diverse student body, our faculty and staff are not. And I know several of my team here have heard you know, me talk about this as one of our goals before, but we learned that over time our faculty makeup, our hiring process in some way were in themselves perpetuating an inequity at the institution, and of course, you know, creating issues for our students. So when we think about student success and academic equity, we realize that we had to make a systemic level change at the institution. So we need to start to identify and correct this system, and among other systems that really reproduce racial stress, stratification that are barriers to student success, and try to evolve a new hiring process to realize the diverse faculty for more equitable student outcomes. And of course, this is a long-term, right, situation that we're trying to deal with. And so our teams went to work in this regard. So faculty and staff, and this is some of the practical, if you will, hands-on. The first and foremost, they worked with tools from places like the Center for Urban Education, and we had help, of course, of being part of that Racial Equity Leadership Academy. And we went through a process to really revamp, first and foremost, our job postings, and I'll show you a quick example of that in a few minutes. And we really took a hard look at our data and to see where in the hiring process were some of the challenges happening. Was it where we were posting? Was it in our initial screening? Was it the first interview? Was it the second interview? Was it happening at the hiring? And of course, we're talking about across departments, so things could vary there, and looking at that. And so we really went forward to truly equip our screening committees and people making these decisions in the hiring with that data. And you can see how we did that. And so here's an example of a change in our faculty job posting. So there's the original here. It says Broward College invites applicants for a full-time tenure track position in fill in the blank, nursing, English. Candidates should be passionate educators who can facilitate the needs of diverse 21st century learners. Great, pretty basic. That's what we had initially. But through the RECE process, this is now our current job posting. The ideal candidate will share Broward College's commitment to educating its racially and socioeconomically diverse student population. We currently enroll around 51,000 students, the majority of whom are from racially minoritized populations. We break out the demographics here in the job description. Broward College is a minority-majority institution reflecting the great responsibility the college has to the educational attainment and economic well-being of the surrounding community, right? So definitely just even a change there at the job description level. This is something similar. Again, the original language that we've had, candidates should provide a teaching portfolio that includes a statement of teaching philosophy, evidence of teaching effectiveness, including course evals and sample syllabi, and so forth. But the RECE revised job description is the teaching portfolio must include a statement of teaching philosophy, right, the same, evidence of teaching effectiveness, including course evals, and sample syllabi and evidence of recent experience working with African American, Latinx, Native American, and other racially minoritized students in the classroom, and an understanding of historical patterns of exclusion of these groups within higher education. So again, a big change just even in terms of the job description. And this is an iterative process, right? We just recently, so we changed the job descriptions, and then people have come back and said, well, can we fix some other things? Can we continue to improve those things? And so in total, and this is a work in progress, and we're presenting this at Achieving the Dream at the Equity Institute actually later this week. You know, these are some of the things that we've accomplished. We've got the approval of the new job descriptions, and as I mentioned, we're hiring new full-time faculty. We've got the recruiting data. We've really had to dig in with our Power BI team and say, you know, where are we missing the boat in terms of realizing our diverse faculty and breaking that out. Unconscious bias training, we always had that, but we've revamped that actual training. And so all of our screening committees and our hiring managers go through that. And then breaking out the demographic data by pathway for students as well as by faculty. And this is really interesting when you get to the department level at a large institution, right? It can change wildly in those things. But again, getting those people saying, hey, this is what your students look like in this program, and this is what our faculty look like and have looked like for this many years, you know, and here's the research saying we need to realize the diverse faculty, right? We don't improve our student outcomes. And this, with all the other things we're doing towards academic equity, this is kind of a baseline. We need to try to address this. I talked a little bit about the teaching portfolio, and you know, where are we advertising? You know, Hispanic serving institutions, historically Black college and universities. Where are we posting these positions and reaching out to for our faculty candidates? And of course, this continues. We're doing a whole bunch of other stuff, and you'll hear a lot about it hopefully at the conference today. But some of our other big, if you will, scaled efforts toward equity is our relationship with the Association of College and University Educators, our AQ, teaching credential and my credentials. We've really invested heavily in scaling that, and this year for the first time, we incentivize that. We incentivize funding for faculty to participate in the AQ training because we have seen great improvements in outcomes, retention outcomes, learning outcomes, all kinds of outcomes. And Associate Vice President Levine can talk about it much more than I can, but we're doing that with AQ. Of course, we've invested heavily in the online space and seeing how does equity look there, investing in terms of our online and our high flex offering. Training, we've done a lot in social justice training at the institution for our faculty as well as our academic leaders. And one of the things we're doing is, as we look at our high schools, we have 13 high schools in the districts in what we call our Broward Unlimited Potential areas. And these are areas with low educational attainment, low employment, high rates of unemployment. And these high schools in particular, their college-going population is really low, remarkably low. And so we're working with these high schools to just incentivize post-secondary enrollment through a competition, if you will. And there's a financial incentive for those principals to realize, hey, we want them to come to Broward College, they can go to Northern Essex, we just want to get them into some form of post-secondary training. So those are just a few of the things that work in at Broward College. So it's going to be a great conference. I just wanted to touch a little bit on what we're working and kind of how we're thinking about things, and I think you will see that echoed in the presentation by our Broward College team. Wonderful to be here. And if you have any questions or need anything during your time here, please reach out to us. And great to see everyone. With that, I'll turn it over. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nassi, for that overview. Broward's always been on the leading edge, sort of cutting edge of innovation in higher education, and they bring a lot here for us to think about. And their faculty and their staff who are coming to this conference to present will be mentors for all of us. Thank you. And as a small token of our appreciation for our Broward support, the technical support, and all the other support they give us, I'd like to offer you a check for $1,000 for your development fund.
This is why I'm really here, Dave.
All right, next we'll have Eldion Elmaeus, faculty member at Northern Essex Community College, come up and introduce our keynote speaker for today.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to present Dr. Lane A. Glenn, President of Northern Essex Community College, with campuses in Haverhill and Lawrence, Massachusetts, and serves as chairman of the Massachusetts Council of Community College Presidents. Before he joined Northern Essex staff, he served as Dean of Academic and Student Services at Oakland Community College in Auburn Hills, Michigan, and on the faculty of Lansing Community College in Lansing, Michigan. He has a diverse background in education and the performing arts that includes more than 20 years of teaching and administration alongside work as a writer, an actor, and a director for the stage, television, and films. President Glenn earned a PhD from Michigan State University, a Master of Arts from Oklahoma State University, and a Bachelor of Arts from Northeastern State University. At Northern Essex, he has provided leadership for the college's involvement in achieving the dream and other important initiatives such as early college, an enhanced academic advising model, new tutoring resources, a college success skills course, and more. Dr. Glenn has also been responsible for the significant expansion of NECC's Lawrence campus, including the opening of the college's $27 million El Hefni Allied Health and Technology Center. The redevelopment of streets, sidewalks, parking lots, and other areas in the community have been important to the college campus development in downtown Lawrence. He is a researcher, author, and consultant for higher education professionals, businesses, and the social sectors. He has produced articles and workshops on topics ranging from behavioral styles and team building to conflict management, strategic planning, change management, leadership through storytelling, academic master planning, student development at community colleges, and learning styles in the classroom and in the workplace. He is currently a facilitator for the International Chair Academy for Leadership Training and Development and a certified appreciative inquiry trainer for companyofexperts.net. He is a true servant leader who believes that this world can be and should be a better place. He cares about his students, faculty, and staff, and is not afraid to wear his heart on his sleeve. I could not ask for a better leader. It is with great pleasure that I present President Lane Glenn.
Thank you, Eliane, for the generous introduction. I must be comfortably middle-aged. My bio has stretched longer than my presentation. When did that happen? It's so good to see all of you. Who's been to TASS before? Most of the people in the room. It's like it all waited for us, right? We're back, and so many things are just as we left them. It's 85 degrees. There's a bunch of green lizards on the towels over at the pool, right? Harold and Craig are teching. Thank you guys, right? Broward, thank you, Broward. The Riverside is awesome. It is so fantastic to be back here again. And certainly David and Vicki and the TASS board with new members, just fabulous. And as you've heard, if you're new to the conference, you're in for a real treat. The breakout sessions are always practical, hands-on stuff you can take back and use. It's one of my all-time favorite things about this conference is it's people doing this work who are doing this work. So thank you to all the presenters as well. You're in for a real treat today. So yes, I'm an optimist. I've been that way my whole life. And at the same time, as you heard Dr. Nassi say this morning, and thank you for priming the pump, Dr. Nassi, some wonderful stuff in your presentation about what Broward's doing, but more generally, sort of what a lot of us have been experiencing, right? As much of an optimist as I am, and I thought I owed it to you here this morning to try to put some wind in your sails and some smiles in your faces at the beginning of this conference. So we're going to get to that part. And, right, you can't help but look back at the last couple of years and go, bit of a dumpster fire, right? It's been challenging in all kinds of different ways. I ran across this book recently, Exercise Your Demons, a mindful journal. I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that. You got 60 seconds. All right, here's what I'd like you to do in the next 60 seconds. Go ahead and write down the 3 things that you were most worried, fretful, anxious about. Maybe they're personal, maybe they're professional, maybe they're political, maybe they're global. Whatever has you on edge. Oop, what is happening here? What did I do? I did something. There we go, all right. I'm not gonna ask you to share these, so you can write whatever you want, okay? 60 seconds, 2 or 3 things that are really bugging you. Some of you were finished before you started. All right, I'm going to dash this down. Some of you are going to keep going all morning. But I'm going to ask you to stop. All right, you can stop now. It's okay. Now let's try this. I said I wouldn't ask you to stop. Well, first of all, were some of these on your list? Probably, right? A few of these maybe. Certainly, right, the pandemic, the demographic cliff. Dr. Nassi talked about that. Everybody at breakfast was talking about that. We're all facing enrollment challenges, or most of us anyway. It depends on where you are in the country, but most of us anyway. Some economic challenges, concerns about free speech on campus, and on and on. Lots of things on fire, it seems. Now let's try this. We have a tradition around my house at dinner time that we each share something we're thankful for and something that we're hopeful for as we're starting to eat our meal. Turn to somebody at your table. I'm going to ask you to share this. Turn to somebody at your table. This can be very simple. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. one thing that you're thankful for this morning and one thing that you're hopeful for this morning. Just turn to somebody at your table and share that, please.
And I'm thankful that people that I love are still alive. It's just the little things, right, that you're thankful for. But it's like that idea of like Zach. It's a great tradition to like those right? It's like because we now know that practice is with the same. Yeah. Whereas the exercises are we do this every Friday also at my house. Not like you guys do it like every day. Which probably doesn't happen very often.
All right, so there's an exercise I really wish I could let you go on all morning. What did you notice a few minutes ago when I asked you to write down all the things that you're fretful about? What did you notice in the room? Utter silence, stern expressions, slouched shoulders, right? What did you notice when I said turn to somebody and share something you're thankful for and hopeful for? Noise, jubilation, shoulders came up. Dawn over here went like this. Did you see her? I saw. What were you saying when you did that?
Well, we were hopeful to afford one of those boats one day.
No. $100 million boat. Yeah, all right. I see how you are. Anyway, it's a whole different feeling, isn't it? Right? Yeah. So everything on both of your lists is important. Okay, the stuff that you're fretful about and anxious about, good or bad, it's important to you and it's important to a lot of people. And yes, I'm an optimist, but I'm not here, I promise you, I'm not here to convince you to ignore the things that you're worried about or fretful about or anxious about. I am here to make sure that even as we're paying attention to those things, and we should, and hopefully finding ways to fix them, improve them, avoid them, or destroy them, whatever we need to do with them, that you're just as mindful about the positive things that are happening for us in higher education, in your personal life, on our college campuses, with our students, who of course are at the heart of all we do, right? Any botanists in the room? Yes, no, maybe? What's a heliotrope? Oh, Harold's a botanist. Harold's also the leader of a band, and he's trying to reform his band. His bass player's getting married, his drummer's getting married. They're all getting off and getting married. So if you know a couple of musicians, Harold, are you really a botanist?
Well, I do some planting.
All right. You know what a heliotrope is?
No.
All right. So we'll all do this together. So Helios was the Greek god of the sun. That chariot pulled the sun across the sky, right? A heliotrope is a flower that follows the course of the sun across the sky, like a sunflower, right? So if you watch a field of sunflowers like this is what they do. They literally, you can watch them during the course of the day, follow the sun across the sky. The heliotropic effect is the tendency for living systems to follow light and to avoid darkness. Or to put it another way, to follow life-giving forces and to stay away from things that endanger life. And people are like that. Human systems are like that. Right? We're drawn toward our vision for the future. And oftentimes, we get the energy, as you did in the room a minute ago, from a life-giving vision of the future, right? Something that's brighter and sunnier. But whatever your vision for the future is, whether it's bright and sunny or dark and dismal, that's the vision you're drawn toward, which is one of the reasons I'm here to encourage you to at least recognize some of the things I'm going to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so. some of the positive things that are going on in higher education. A lot of studies have shown, by the way, I write a blog, it's called Running the Campus. I had intended to put this on my blog this morning before I got here, but we had some IT stuff happening at my college. They're fixed, so immediately after this, you don't have to worry about taking a bunch of notes is what I'm telling you, if you're interested in that sort of thing. This will be out on my blog later, you can go ahead and find it and read it and check it all out yourself. So a lot of studies have shown that a positive outlook is an important factor and predictor of resilience. This includes our students, right? Optimists tend to bounce back faster. For athletes and others, visioning exercises, right? Focusing on strengths and what you do well leads to faster improvement than hammering away on mistakes. Businesses and other organizations with cultures that are strengths-based and more positive tend to be more successful over time. So how you view and describe the world goes a long way toward creating the world, right? So we have choices when it comes to that. So you've exercised some demons, and they're all legitimate causes for concern. Again, not trying to talk you out of them, I promise. Let's spend some time walking in the flowers a little bit, the sunflowers, and see what's going on positively. First, let's start by acknowledging some of the things that Dr. Nassi said. Despite the dumpster fire of the last couple of years, a lot of amazing things have been accomplished, right? By those of you here in the room and your colleagues back on your campuses. Online teaching and learning, more progress in faculty development and course creation for online teaching in 2 months, March and April of 2020, and in the previous 20 years. We know this, right? I'll come back to that. I'm not done with that part. We'll come back to that. Technology support, right? Our campus has created laptop lending programs, Wi-Fi hotspots, tech support systems to help students and faculty do the best they possibly could anyway in online teaching and learning. Remote work, we created systems for faculty and staff to move into remote operations and continue operating for a couple of years. We transformed campuses. We converted classrooms and meeting spaces into COVID testing and vaccination sites, emergency food and supply stations, and even housing, right, for homeless students and community members. Some amazing transformations. And we managed to maintain some personal connections. I'm with Dr. Nassi. I'm kind of done with Zoom happy hours too, but we did it for a while and it was better than nothing, right? So we persisted. And now that vaccination rates are climbing and infection rates and masks are falling, we're also hearing some encouraging news, believe it or not, about the future of higher education. And that's why I'm here this morning, right? Let's start with this one. It's a headline that we don't see often enough. Believe it or not, student completion is improving, right? You don't always get that message, but it's true. According to the Completing College report that was just released last month from the National Student Clearinghouse, the share of students who complete a 4-year degree within 6 years improved to a decade-long high of just over 62%. 10 years ago, it was only 54%. That's a big gain, right? That kind of percentage gain is not easy to accomplish across that many students. That's a huge gain in a decade. And the biggest boost at community colleges, which saw a 2% increase year over year. Enormous, right? Completion rates improved for white, black, and Latino students, with the biggest gain, nearly 2%, for black students. So across the board, these rates increased in 32 out of the 46 states that the Clearinghouse has good data for. Now, this is important, yes, for student success. It's important for the economy, the workforce, and college budgets too, which are helped by retention and completion, right? That's a huge plus happening right now in higher education. Student support services. According to the Clearinghouse, the improvements that we're seeing, those gains in completion, which began prior to the pandemic, are the result of accumulation, right? Students, advisors, colleges alike for several years now, including, again, many of you, making long-term adjustments to all the different factors that go into making sure that everyone who starts college has what they need to finish. So those adjustments include some pretty radical reforms of developmental education, which you have been presenting about here at TASS for several years, all of the changes to developmental education, recognizing the importance of mental health assistance, programs that combine academic, financial, and basic needs supports, like the City University of New York's Accelerated Study and Associate Programs, the ASAP initiative that some of you have probably heard about, right? It's a program for the City University of New York designed to help associate degree students complete their degrees in 3 years, with a goal of at least half of the students doing that. That's huge, right? Those of you who track this sort of thing, and we'll look at some of that here in just a minute. And they do this in a variety of ways, right? Through personalized advisement, career development services, financial incentives, full-time attendance, some modest financial supports, and the success, which is consistently about 30% higher than other students, has inspired other programs across New York, in Ohio, California, my own state, Massachusetts, where we've managed to convince the legislature to probably lose $17 million now in support for what we call the Supporting Urgent Community College Equity Through Student Services. Happens to spell success, right? $17 million across the 15 community colleges in our state, specifically to hire professionals like you, right? Advisors, like the staff from my friends here from Missouri that I met this morning and chatted with a little bit, right? And others around the room, specifically to hire more people to work directly with students. When it comes to basic needs, the Hope Center's Real College Survey, which many of you are familiar with, it's administered annually at colleges and universities across the country. It's become one of the most effective tools for advocating for our students, and it's consistently shown that 3 out of 5 college students report struggling with some form of basic needs insecurity, such as hunger or housing insecurity. And in response, colleges across the country, including probably all of yours, have established food and clothing pantries, created special dormitory arrangements, or community housing arrangements for students who have been displaced, and more. And this message is being heard by states and by Congress. During the pandemic, Congress expanded the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the SNAP program, to include college students. That's huge. We're hoping it continues. It started during the pandemic. The California State Legislature is actually contemplating paying college students, low-income college students, $500 a month to help with basic needs assistance. Another basic need getting a lot of attention right now, and many of you are involved in this as I've talked to you over the last couple of days, is mental health support for college students. In the best of times, right? In the best of times, being a college student is stressful. It goes without saying the last couple of years have not been the best of times, right? So in a lot of well-publicized surveys that you've probably seen over the past year, we've learned that more than half of college students are regularly, not occasionally, regularly reporting feeling depressed, anxious, or worse. And in response, colleges have been adding mental health counseling staff, working with companies like Timely MD that specialize in providing remote telehealth services, and so forth. All of these activities are important because, yes, they help provide direct assistance to students who really need it. They also destigmatize some of these things, make them easier to talk about, make it easier for our students to reach out for that kind of help. All right, how about this one? On all of our minds, a really big one. Let's sort of do some level setting and manage expectations right away. I'm not here to tell you that enrollment is turning around completely. I'm not that optimistic. Let's establish some baseline here. According to the National Student Clearinghouse, undergraduate and graduate enrollment has been trending downward since about 2012, right? We know that. All we have to do is look at what's happening on our own campuses. And the pandemic only made it much worse, especially for low-income students and students of color. And predictions for the years ahead, as they currently stand, are not looking a lot better, right? We've got a declining birth rate, which means we're going to have millions fewer 18-year-olds ready to go off to college each year for about the next decade. A trend that's going to be particularly challenging in the Midwest and where I am, up in New England. In 2011, we reached an all-time high of 20.5 million college students in America. Today, there are just over 17 million, right? So over 3 million fewer students enrolled in college than there were a decade ago. And given some major demographic changes, unless something changes, that number is expected to fall even further. However, less than half the adult population in America has a college degree. We've got an untapped market of over 100 million people. And colleges, especially community colleges and less selective four-year universities, are actively opening their doors wider than ever before to high school students, low-income students, students of color. So, the somewhat encouraging news about access and enrollment. 2 months ago in January, the Common Application reported that unique applicants are up more than 13% over pre-pandemic levels. The total volume of Common Applications up nearly 20%. Encouragingly, Underrepresented students of color increased by 17%, and first-generation applicants by 21%. That's huge. Public colleges are seeing the biggest gains, 24% compared to 17% for private colleges. Now, the Common App represents about 900 institutions, right? So it's not everyone, and the trend may not reach community colleges, or if it does, it may not reach community colleges at the same level, and we should be prepared to act on it, right? During the pandemic, transfer enrollment, which is particularly important for the academic mobility of our low-income students and students of color and first-generation students, fell dramatically, 9% between the first and second year of the pandemic. Thankfully, according to the Student Clearinghouse, it seems to have stabilized. This year it dropped less than 1%. We'll call that flat, right? These days, a less than 1% decline in just about anything, we'll term it a win. It's hard to say exactly how many students we have participating in dual enrollment and early college programs across the country. They're not counted the same everywhere. We do know that the number has been growing, and it's been growing rapidly. The Government Accountability Office estimates that more than 70% of U.S. high schools now offer some form of dual enrollment credit partnership with their local high schools. And somewhere between 10 and 30% of high school students are earning college credits, over 1 million a year, well over 1 million a year. In my home state of Massachusetts, we're seeking to increase the number of early college students participating tenfold. We've been a bit behind other states, from a few thousand to tens of thousands of students. There are a lot of challenges still to be worked out, but the benefits are clear. Early college students are more likely to attend and complete degrees after high school, especially low-income students and students of color. And the return on investment is enormous. In Massachusetts, we have a public policy institute called Mass Inc. They've done some financial analyses. Other states have done similar things. And we found that the return on investment by the state is 15 to 1. It's hard to prove that kind of return on other types of programs, but for early college, it's real, right? So without a doubt, we still have a lot of challenges ahead when it comes to access enrollment, but we also have some glimmers of hope in increased college applications, in improving transfer enrollments, expanding early college, and an opportunity to reach even more people who historically have not been attending college. All right, we said we'd come back to this one. A little level setting, as we have done before, manage some expectations. Yes, in 2 months we did do a lot. It wasn't always the greatest, we know that too, right? We got there. We're not gonna pretend that it was always the highest quality. A surprising number of students and faculty thrived, and many did not. We know that too. The return to in-person learning is going to be a huge benefit to a lot of people. And a lot of students and faculty who thought they would never survive, let alone thrive in an online environment, found out that they actually do have some skills and some affinities for that kind of teaching and learning. And it's been a great leveler in lots of ways, right? In a synchronous environment, introverted students can be as successful as extroverted students. I have 2 daughters, one of each. I've seen it with both of them. Maybe you have too in your own family, right? Students with physical disabilities don't face barriers in the classroom. Students with children, jobs, aging parents, or transportation challenges. I just described 85% or more of our students, didn't I? Have more flexible schedules that don't require commutes. At the same time, our colleges have developed a lot of new courses and fully online degree programs and new capacity for online and remote instruction that can be big advantages in the future. So we can all expect expansion of these online and hybrid type courses, other kinds of flexible delivery, more of us offering fully online remote degrees. This one that we've been waiting decades for. Some of us have been doing it all along. Many of us have been hoping our colleagues would jump on the bandwagon. Learning management systems integrated into all teaching, including face-to-face classes, right? All kinds of ways to do that. More professional development, we heard about it from Broward, for online teaching. And the big one, hopefully, finally, after decades, improve student success in online, hybrid, and remote courses as a result of all this. If you're from around here and you don't understand what that last bullet point is, ask somebody at your table from a northern state and they'll explain it to you. You have hurricane days down here? Yeah, we got hurricane days. Right? We do snow days up north. We did, right? I was listening to NPR a couple weeks ago, and I heard the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, which happens to specialize in this kind of workforce training stuff, talking about some interesting trends in credentialing among American employers. There's a report you can read from the Fed of Philadelphia called "A Moment of Opportunity: The COVID-Era Job Market for Non-College Workers." And it describes how there have been more opportunity employment job postings. Those are jobs with good wages that don't require college degrees as we're emerging from the pandemic. In fact, there was a 38% increase in these postings between 2020 and 2021. This is a huge shift in the job market after decades of credential inflation in America. And this can be a tremendous opportunity, especially for community colleges and less selective public universities, right? For a long time now, employers, especially in tight labor markets, which we almost always have up in New England, have been able to require more academic credentials, more degrees than is often necessary for jobs. And finally, the job market is striking back. A declining fertility rate that was already underway, that then worsened by 2 economic recessions in the last decade, a shrinking labor force, the pandemic, they've all put more bargaining power into the hands of workers. And 68% of workers, I mentioned this earlier, in America don't have a bachelor's degree or higher. That figure is 78% for Black Americans and 81% for Hispanic Americans. A lot of people don't have that college credential. This is a huge, seismic, largely positive shift. Employers need workers, they're ready to relax their requirements. According to the Wellspring Initiative's November 2021 report, Digital Credentials and Competency Frameworks, 36% of HR leaders say they're relaxing or eliminating college degree requirements. 34% say their organization is operating with a skills-based hiring strategy. There's a lot for us to take in and to respond to there. Who's Paul LeBlanc? If you're from my neighborhood, you definitely know who this guy is. You probably know him anyway. President of Southern New Hampshire University, which over the last decade has started eating your lunch. Right? 130,000 students now, mostly online. Mostly, not all, but mostly completing their coursework in a competency-based framework. So that instead of having to spend 15, 16 weeks in a classroom for a semester, they spend as little as 2 or 3 if you can demonstrate what you know and can do. That's the short version of all of that, right? More than a decade ago, when they first started this, had to get special permission from the Department of Education so that they could disperse financial aid according to this model. A little tricky, but they got it. Since then, other institutions have followed. My own college became the first in Massachusetts to provide competency-based education in a small way. We're not scaled up the way Southern New Hampshire University is. President LeBlanc just published this book, Students First. What I appreciate about the book is it's a dual argument. It's an argument for why this kind of approach can work for American employers in the workforce, and how and why it's an equitable approach. This first part is sort of basic to the model of competency-based education, that students should have the flexibility, back to what we were saying earlier about these flexible options for students, to gain, assess, and certify their knowledge on their own terms and timelines. And we should create, this is President LeBlanc arguing this, we should create learning environments that value competencies rather than credit hours. What does it really matter how long you sit in that chair, Alexandra, if an hour sooner than Andrea, there we go, I'm reading name tags from stuff. If an hour sooner than Andrea, you can demonstrate you know this stuff, right? Is basically the argument that SNHU made. And this, that it's about equity, right? Realigning our priorities will enable larger populations of students. Going back to what we were saying, more than 100 million Americans don't have credentials. Doesn't have to be a 4-year credential. Maybe it is, maybe it's a 2-year credential. Maybe it's something else. The Business Roundtable represents some of the chief executive officers and human resource officers of America's leading companies. So think Amazon, Best Buy, Citibank, that's just the ABCs. It's a long list, right, of big companies. One of their newest initiatives is what they call a multi-year targeted effort to reform companies' hiring and talent management practices to emphasize the value of skills rather than just degrees, and to improve equity, diversity, and workplace culture. These are some of the nation's largest companies looking at this. Now, This is not new. I'm pretty sure I delivered a trends presentation like this at TASS, not focused on optimism necessarily, 7 or 8 years ago, and talked about micro-credentials. And I'll mention that word again here. It's been kind of nibbling at the edges of things for a long time. This represents a real stake in the ground. This is not the same. This is a different shift when you've got this number of companies of this size with that many employees actually hiring based on this, right? Not that the micro-credential or something is icing on the cake, that it's fundamental to the hiring process. So they aim to do this by rewriting job descriptions, including the skills that the companies need for the jobs they're hiring for, and helping to develop people initially with those skills and then progressively, right? So taking into account prior learning assessment, where you can demonstrate what you know when you come into the credentialing process. That competency-based education to help accelerate that credentialing process. Things that we've been hearing about for years, like digital badges and micro-credentials, short bursts of learning and skills-based education and credentialing that are stackable. That last one is vital, right? Because what we don't want to do as educators is get into a position where we're only training people for minimal level, entry-level skills and not providing them that opportunity for advancement. So I'm not up here to sell you that, I promise. That last part is really important. How can you help someone access a credential that previously would have taken 4 years, now might take a couple of months, so they can at least get in the door and then start stacking up the education and credentialing and make progressive decisions about their jobs and careers. According to an analysis by Inside Higher Ed, recently, in the 18 months following the murder of George Floyd between June of 2020 and November 2021, more than a third, just over 35% of the presidents and chancellors that American colleges and universities hired were members of racial minority groups. That's huge. Just over a quarter of those were black. In the 18 months prior to George Floyd's death, only 22% of presidential hires were non-white. Just over 14% were black. The proportion of Latino presidents also grew during those 18 months to 7% compared to 4% in the previous 18 months. These are encouraging signs, right? Back to what you saw Dr. Nassi share with you, the AACC's composition of what management, faculty, staff, student bodies tend to look like. These are encouraging signs toward hiring for equity at the leadership level at a time when we need it the most. I'm gonna leave that one there for just a second. I'm gonna wait for you to get out of your system, whatever you wanna get out of your system. I know it might not seem this way. I'm about to try to convince you that indeed, college is becoming more affordable. Don't misunderstand, the cost of tuition across the country did go up last year, but according to the College Board's Trends in College Pricing and Student Aid, at community colleges, tuition crept up about 1.3% and only about 1.6% at public four-year colleges. Inflation last year was 5.3%, so the sticker price of college, and I'm gonna go on, I'm not leaving it here, I promise, I'm not trying to trick you. The sticker price of college, as compared to inflation, actually went down for the first time in 30 years. It's been a long while that tuition has been soaring while inflation has not been, right? Good news, low-income students at community colleges are getting enough grant aid to cover their tuition. We know that's why the basic needs support is so important, right? Tuition is often not the biggest challenge for community college students. The average net tuition at four-year colleges, also net, right, after grant aid and all of that, also the lowest in 30 years. We've had more institutional grant aid going to students, $22 billion, the highest in a decade. State aid flowing, and importantly, borrowing has dropped considerably after reaching a high of $135 billion a decade ago. So it may not always seem like it, but in some respects, college is actually becoming more affordable. That could be one of the primary reasons that we're seeing some improved public perception of what we all do. Improved student success and access to technological advances, right-sizing credentials, more leadership diversity, greater affordability. These are all having an impact on the public perceptions of colleges and universities in America, which, let's accept it, has taken a beating in recent years, right? A lot of public opinion polls between 2017, 2019, just before the pandemic, reflected some pretty negative thoughts about colleges and universities, particularly among conservative Americans. losing confidence in American education, believing it didn't have the value it once had, expressing that perhaps we weren't meeting workforce needs. But a recent poll conducted by the American Council on Education, there's some heartening news. More Americans say that higher education is generally on the right track. Twice as many as thought it was on the wrong track. More than a third said they believed the economic value had increased. That's a big change. A few years prior to that, it was less than a quarter. And Americans are about evenly divided when you ask if graduates are ready for the workforce. That's an improvement too, over about a quarter a few years before. Last thing I'll mention, and if there were any CFOs in the room, they'd probably agree to this because most of them across the country seem to. According to the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges, between 2016 and 2020, just before the pandemic, 92 nonprofit colleges and universities closed or announced that they would be closing or merging. You remember that story? Well, yeah, it was happening all over the place, right? Don't get me wrong, that is still a looming threat. But fast forward a couple of years, and thanks to a lot of federal stimulus money, a soaring stock market for college investments, and some careful crisis budget management, most colleges are in a much better place today than they were just a few years ago. Right? State support has increased 10%, topping $100 billion for the first time. That's for public colleges and universities. We've had our credit rating upgraded to stable for the first time in 4 years, the higher education sector by Standard & Poor's. Endowments shattered earnings last year, average of 35%. So you've got a couple of dozen colleges or private universities now, mostly private universities, a couple of public systems, in the tens of billions of dollars with their endowments. Some predictions that over the next 15 years, it could be more than 100 of those. Yes, most of us in the room are still counting our endowments, Broward perhaps accepted. Most of us are still counting our endowments in the small millions, and even those managed to earn pretty well last year. The result is 72% of our chief financial officers believe that their institutions are going to be financially stable over the next 5 years. That's a huge change compared to a couple of years ago. So this is not the time to be Pollyannish about the future of higher education. I'm not suggesting that everything is unicorns and roses. It's not. We face enormous financial, political, cultural challenges in the years ahead, and to ignore that would be pretty foolishly irresponsible. But overcoming those challenges is going to take a sense of common mission, of strength forged in knowing what we do well, and like all of you in the room are so good at, a willingness to experiment, to innovate, to ride the waves of change toward an even brighter future for our institutions. Thanks for your time here this morning. Am I dismissing them to their rooms? We have a few minutes if anybody has questions or would like to talk about anything. Yeah, we do.
Sure.
Great. I think there are actually some microphones out there too. Questions, comments, brilliant epiphanies. We're here for all of them. By the way, one other silver lining we discovered, it may be a sort of grim silver lining, but I was talking to my friends from Missouri here this morning, and the enrollment decline means a lot of parking spaces available on campus, right? We decided that at breakfast this morning. Remember in 2011, 2012, my own college did the hardest thing it had ever done in 60 years of existence. It required people to get a parking sticker for their cars. Biggest battle the college had ever fought, because in 2011, people were parking in the grass. One other upside we found to enrollment challenges recently is in Missouri and in Massachusetts, there's more parking spaces. Questions?
I have one.
Okay.
I was kind of heartened by the thought about so many people in our population who don't have degrees. And in your research, did you find anything about students not coming right out of high school? People returning to college and getting degrees and building their credentials.
Yeah, the adult learner population is where most community colleges and less selective four-year universities have lost the most, right, in the last several years. The average age, according to the AACC, of community college students a decade ago was creeping up near 30. It was 28 or something like that. I'd be surprised if we were anything above 26 nationally. Some of us are down 25. Now that's a little deceptive, right, because now we have all these really young students, 14, 15, early college students, and we always have 70 or 80-year-olds. And to your point, what she asked was, do you see anything about this returning adult student population? That's where a lot of our hope is, I think, and that's where a lot of these micro-credential opportunities, on-ramps, and through non-credit to credit activities, things other than the traditional 4-year degree or even the traditional 2-year degree may hold some promise. Employer-sponsored opportunities, we're in a labor market right now. It won't last forever, but we're in a labor market right now where there can be some real advantage to working with employers as colleges. My own institution's doing some of this, probably some of yours are as well, toward that SNHU model, right? Employer-sponsored programs to get folks credentials. So it's an area of opportunity that is largely untapped, especially if we dig deeper into that adult population. Folks, I'll be around a little bit today. Thank you again for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. We've got some marvelous breakout sessions ahead.
I'm going to give you a couple minutes, ready, set, go.
At Northern Essex, he has provided leadership for the college's involvement.
Thank you, Elian, for the generous introduction. Who's been to TASS before? Most of the people in the room.
Out the demographic data by pathway.
Broward's always been on the leading edge, sort of cutting edge of innovation in higher education.
Of why your initiative is so good that you need more funding and scaling, right?
Thank you so much, Esmeralda. That was very inspiring.